Welcome back to Empathic Chronicles, where we go deep into the heart of human experience. My name is Tiffany Elise, and I am your host. Today's episode is all about turning pain into power, how adversity can be the fuel for growth, resilience, and really, ultimate transformation. Let's all face it. We face struggles, whether it's involving your career or personal trauma or life transitions. We're going to get into all that. But first, as per usual, grab your cafecito, take a seat, get comfy, and let's dive in. So, with all these struggles that I mentioned, here's the truth. Those challenges don't have to break you. In fact, studies show that they can actually make you stronger. So, I know how people are like, oh, what's the silver lining and things, but it really is true. If you can look at it from a different perspective, a different angle of what it taught me, what it, helped me realize, it can be positive. Now, psychologists call this post-traumatic growth. And essentially, it's the idea that people often emerge from trauma or adversity with new perspectives and a greater sense of strength. I know just from being someone who raised my sister for most of her childhood, and had to really endure things at a very young age, I feel and I want to believe that stuff makes me stronger. I feel like the person that I am today, I don't know that I would have been that same person had I not gone through the things that I went through, had I not felt what it's like to be neglectful, and then, becoming a parent, realizing that I never want to neglect my kids, going and living, in a single parent household. I learned a lot about relationships, just because I saw so many different relationships between my parents happening, and I learned the good and the bad and the ugly. And so I do attribute my almost 18 years, guys. I can't believe it. We're not there yet though. But I attribute the things that I went through and those things that happened to me to why I've been able to successfully be married to the love of my life for this long. So, you can take any example in your life, but it's important to recognize that it is true. Hard times can bring out the best in you if you really make it a point to overcome it. So, let's get into some research. I've not done research here on any of my episodes, so I did a little bit of research with regards to this topic. And according to the American Psychological Association, so the APA, people who experience significant adversity can develop what's known as resilience, right? So the ability to bounce back from difficult situations. In fact, the APA also notes that resilience is not a trait people are born with, but something we build through experience. So that's going back to what I said about whatever you go through, it can ultimately be what makes you a stronger person. So each time you face a challenge and come through it, you are actively strengthening your ability to cope and to thrive. For me, one of those pivotal moments came when I chose to essentially cut off communication with my mom because things were just getting really unhealthy and things were getting ugly. And you would think having gone through that, how would that impact me? How would that make me stronger? Well, I learned what a successful parent-child relationship looks like. I had the ability to compare to the type of relationship I had with my mom. And so the pain of that internal battle essentially was like the fuel for my growth of like, okay, because I could easily be like a negative Debbie Downer and be like, oh my gosh, I don't have a relationship with my mom. I'm just going to be this like negative person that's always depressed and just doesn't see the cup half full. But I said, what is that going to do me as a mother, as a wife, as a career woman? I need to see the glass like half, what is it, half full or half empty? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But I just think that whatever it is that you go through, it ultimately brings you out on the other side, right? So like another time that I want to talk about is okay, so I moved across the country for all but 6 months. Okay. I moved from Florida to Colorado. Okay. And the goal in doing this was because I wanted to be closer to my mom, because at that time our relationship was okay. And, it could always have been better. Every time that we tried, it could have been better. But it was good enough to the point that I was able to convince my husband to ultimately uproot our lives and let's go be closer to my mom. Also, that lasted for all but 6 months. Okay. It wasn't a good fit for my family. And so we decided to move back. It was a hard decision. It was like a confrontation with myself because I kind of felt guilty because it was my idea, because I thought that this was, where we should be. And like, not only did my mom let me down, but, she completely just did a 360 on me. And moving back to Florida on the East Coast, where, I'm originally from, was one of the most empowering decisions I've ever made. Okay. I mean, the pain of that battle of accepting, that I made a mistake. I moved my family across the country. That cost a lot of money. That costs a lot of time. That causes a lot of stress. And I was ready to own that because number one, it was my idea. And number two, I wanted to get my family back to being happy again. And that was something that, again, I had to confront that head on. And I have to say that moving back, it wasn't really until like probably 3 or 6 months after being back that I was like, wow, I did learn something from that, because so many times we go through things and because we're so caught up in the pain that it brings, we forget the lesson learned. And so I try to look at that situation or any situation where, I feel defeated or I feel like I failed. I try to look at the lesson learned. I mean, I am someone whose career involves just managing and planning a lot. And so lessons learned are things that I practice on a daily basis, depending on strategy and how, I execute things and things of that nature. So I feel like I had the skill to overcome it. And I did. It took me quite a while. It was really hurtful. Of course, again, my relationship with my mom was strained. But you know what? At the end of the day, my nucleus is my family, my husband, my children. And I knew that I had to do what was best for us and what would ultimately make us happy and what would ultimately give us the stamina that we're used to. So this brings us to an important point. How do we transform pain into power? Well, the first step, and I think I've alluded to this a few moments ago, but it's acknowledgement. For quite a while, I was like, shit, man, this was my idea to move across the country, to spend all this money, to physically just uproot my family and go somewhere just because I thought that I was doing the right thing for my family and being closer to people that I was never close to. My mom and, my stepdad or her husband, however you want to call it. The only people that I've always been close with are like my half siblings. I've always been close to them, but it was just a really shitty situation. But I read this study from 2018, and it's a study that was published in the Journal of Positive Psychology. And it found that people who openly acknowledge their pain and struggled through it were more likely to experience personal growth and a greater sense of purpose afterward. Suppressing or avoiding that pain, I've found often leads to like prolonged suffering emotionally and mentally, while facing it head on can be the first step towards healing, you know? And I can't stress enough how crucial this is. Like, whether you've dealt with addiction, like I know that I've dealt with addiction, and that's something that I struggled with very much. And I overcame that. And, it's something that I still go through highs and lows. And, my addiction was food, and my cause, or like what happens subsequently as a result of my addiction to food, was I had an eating disorder. And so dealing with that and overcoming that, I can't stress enough how crucial it is to face it head on. Career challenges. I can share that there was a point in my career where I was in a really low place. I was in a job that I didn't like. It was a job that I almost felt like, what the heck am I doing here? I felt completely out of place. I felt unhappy. I felt unfulfilled. And so that was something that I had to face head on, and told myself, like, it is my dream to get to work for where I work today. And I literally made it a point and a goal to focus on going for that role, that job, because I was like, no, I know what I want. I know what I deserve. I busted my ass. I went to school. Maybe I went to school as an adult, but I still did it. And I graduated as an adult. I have my degrees. Like, I know what I deserve, and I know what I want. And it's different than what I come from or what I'm used to. So it could also be personal trauma, which I've shared plenty on this podcast about, personal trauma that I've always struggled with, like I have, but you have to allow yourself to feel the pain before you can transform it. And for so long, I didn't do that, and I avoided and suppressed and suppressed. And when it came time to realize, like, am I over this? I was like, holy shit, no, I'm not. Because I, was beating myself up about it, and I would, go to this negative place. And, so this is something that I've had to learn, especially when facing deep emotional scars from childhood trauma. I've really had to learn that though it hurts, and though it's the last thing that you want to feel, you have to feel that pain before you can transform it. Another important aspect is reframing adversity. So, a well-known study that was conducted by psychologists at the University of North Carolina found that people who reframed their hardships by viewing them as opportunities for growth ultimately reported like higher levels of life satisfaction and well-being. This mindset shift, like, it can turn the darkest of moments into sources of strength. And I have been in some pretty dark places where you feel just unworthy, you feel defeated, you feel like you completely failed, and you don't know where to go from there. And finding that source of strength in the darkest of moments can be so hard, but mind over power. And there's this saying that one of my really, really good friends has told me in the past, because it's something I always struggle with. And it's, in Spanish, it's sal de la cabeza, like get out of your head. And I don't know about you, but I can be a habitual overthinker. And getting out of that mindset of not being like that, because you're ultimately just beating yourself up silly mentally and emotionally, it can really shift your mindset. So instead of asking, for example, why me, right? Try asking, what can this teach me? Because like I remember asking myself that question when life felt super heavy, and that reframing helped me take control of my narrative. Because let's face it, I know that, I have a few loose screws, and I know that I struggle with mental illness. I know that I'm a high functioning person. I know that I struggle with depression and anxiety. But what good is it gonna do just sitting here like, okay, yeah, that's what I have. Yeah, that's what I go through. Like, I have to at some point overcome that, right? Because I have children, and you may have children, you may not have children. You may have, a career, or just, your family dynamic may look different. But how can you take control of your narrative so that when life feels that heavy, it doesn't like, it doesn't overpower you? And doing that really helped me realize that, because for so long I was like, why the hell was I brought up in the environment that I wasn't brought up in? And, that's why I'm this way, and that's why I'm that way. And for a while I was like that. I blamed my past for the reasons why I was the way that I was. And I realized that that was not effective. Now, mind you, I've been in and out of therapy for most of my life, so I probably learned this somewhere in one of my therapy sessions. But it helped me realize that while I couldn't change what happened to me, I could decide what to do with that experience. And I think that is like the change. That is the piece where your whole mindset just goes from negative to positive. And it doesn't mean that you're happy-go-lucky clapping your heels, but it means that you're able to look at the situation and say, yes, it's fucked up. What happened to me is fucked up. It's messed up. I don't think that I deserved it, and you didn't. But what are you going to do so that you can enjoy the rest of your life? Personally, one of the hardest things that I've had to reframe was childhood trauma, which I will share more about in my upcoming book. But growing up, I faced deep pain and shame. And for a long time, I let that define me. So over time, I began to see that those painful experiences didn't have to control my future. I wasn't stuck. That trauma, while devastating, wasn't the sum of who I was. It was just part of my journey. And from that, I learned resilience. And it's something that I try to practice often. It's easier said than done, because there's days where, I have a tough day at work and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I messed up and it's all my fault and it's me. It's all about changing your perspective, your mindset. That's what it really boils down to. Now, I discovered through my healing process that you can find empowerment in vulnerability. And I know many of you know Dr. Brené Brown. She's a leading researcher on vulnerability and shame. She has several books. She's a huge influence in my life, both personally and professionally. But she talks about how vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. This idea alone changed the way I view my past. Understanding that by embracing my vulnerability, I was truly stepping into my true power. Because yes, I have a few loose screws in my head, and I struggle with mental illness, and I'm a high functioning anxious person. But you know what that's gotten me? That helps me be very productive throughout my days, because I'm so high functioning. I can't just sit and do nothing. Now, it's very healthy to take breaks and to be mindful, very mindful, very demure. Oh my God, I hear that all the time now. But it's, embracing that vulnerability and stepping into your true power changes things, man. It's a game changer, okay? I don't care like what you've been through, like there's still opportunity to turn a new leaf. It's hard and it sucks what happened to you and what you had to go through, but I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be your end result. And it doesn't have to define you. Above all else, it does not define you. So here's my message to anyone listening today who feels weighed down by your struggles. You are not alone and your pain is valid. That's what I want everyone to take away from this, because it's not saying that, oh, it's not important what happened to you or the struggle that you went or the divorce that you endured or what have you. No, it's not saying that at all. It's actually saying that your pain is valid. But remember that pain can be your catalyst for growth. And one more research fact, because I'm just geeking out over here, but studies from Harvard Business Review show that resilient individuals often emerge from adversity with a stronger sense of purpose and a clearer vision of their goals. That right there, that's the silver lining. That out of our darkest moments, we can still forge a brighter future. You know how shitty it felt to go back to college and be in a classroom where I was the oldest person? It was fucking embarrassing. But then over time, I was like, you know what? We're in a different day and age. Everybody is doing things different now. And this is my story. And this is how it worked out for me. And, mine was a little bit more complicated and had a little bit more ruckus to it. But I ultimately forged a brighter future because I'm happy to say that I have the career of my dreams and I have a beautiful family and I love my children. And I try to practice breaking those generational curses, breaking those cycles, because at the end of the day, it's within you. It's in your blood. If you come from a certain family or a certain background, it's within you. And so you're constantly fighting against that, always going against the grain. But in the end, it makes you so much stronger, so much stronger. So I want to empower you to let it be your catalyst for growth. Let your pain, let your struggle, let your stress, let that be your catalyst for your growth, okay? So, I know I got really passionate today, but I wanted to get factual because I feel like it's so important to look at things from a positive or just optimistic. You're not expected to go, be positive Patty. It's you can like I've said in previous episodes, go through your pain, go through your struggle, deal with it, manage it, figure out a way to overcome it, and let it be something that grows you. So before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this. I'm talking to you. You are stronger than you know. And every single hard moment that you've survived has prepared you for the amazing things ahead in your life. So remember that the next time that adversity knocks on your door, you have the power to reshape that into something super, super meaningful. So thank you for joining me on this episode of Empathic Chronicles. If this episode spoke to you, I love it. I'm grateful for that. I'd love to hear your story. Reach out on social media and let's continue this journey of growth together. Until next time, stay strong, stay empathic, and keep moving forward. I'm Tiffany Elise, your host, and I am so grateful that you've been with me today. So until next time, bye.